So we got the Nvidia earnings and they were okay. We'll definitely take a look at it on the charts. You can see rising 94% on an annual basis for revenue, but still down a little bit. So they underdelivered based on expectations a little bit, but let's see the effects on markets. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. So Nvidia earnings showed that they did double on revenues, and somehow that was not good enough to keep the stock at its current price, 94% on an annual basis. Earnings per share beating 81 cents versus 75, revenues 35 billion versus 33. Nvidia says it expects 37.5 billion plus or minus 2% in the current quarter, so you can see about 2.5 billion higher, which is about 70% year-over-year growth, which is a slowdown from the 260% annual growth. Obviously, no one expected this kind of growth to go on forever, and it is starting to slow down a little bit, but still, this company deserves to be very, very expensive, and it is. It's definitely expensive, and that's part of why the markets are pulling back, even with these really good results. And they mentioned here, not all of the data center sales are chips. About 3.1 billion was due to network parts, so they are branching out a little bit, pretty substantial at 3.1 billion, about 10% of total revenues. Obviously, the vast majority is still chips, but at least they're spread out a little bit. Biggest consumers, as you would expect, Microsoft, Oracle, OpenAI. The Blackwell chip continues to be the center of that. And they said here, we are in full production and it is selling very, very well. They plan to continue to ramp up next year, and that they're on track for several $billion of Blackwell revenue. And you can see here, even Nvidia Gaming reporting 3.2 billion versus the 3.03 expectation, as chips are being used for the 3D gaming technology. So they're selling chips to everybody, and the demand is still very, very high, and the company is still growing. But like I said, the expectations were very, very high, and the stock did come down a little bit. Moving over to fear and greed, we stepped up 1 point here to a 51. This is not really telling us anything here over the last couple days because we are in that consolidation. The only thing I really want to point out here is that breadth continues to crater despite markets holding up. Put call ratios kind of leveled off a little bit. VIX starting to get into that SMA area. We'll see if we reject or break through there. And then safe haven demand still in greed, junk bonds still sitting in extreme greed. So very little changes, really looking at that breadth, and we'll look at it later on the charts. Moving over to earnings, you can see Nvidia beating on the top and bottom. Target, absolute dumpster fire, did a short on them this morning. They were down 16.5%. Palo Alto beat on the bottom line, missed on the top. And then for tomorrow, you still have Intuit, John Deere, Ross, Agilent for the Monday. Couple of companies left out there, but all of the heavy hitters are done at this point, and I wouldn't expect too much out of these unless you're trading them specifically. Moving over to the economic calendar, 20-year bond auction came in at 4.68, just a little bit higher than the previous, not moving a whole lot. For tomorrow, we do got some economic data, Philly Fed manufacturing, initial jobless claims as always, existing home sales, month over month, and for the October calendar month, so fairly interesting there from an economic perspective. And then 10-year tips, Fed balance sheet continues to sell off well below that 7 trillion mark at this point. And then for the Friday, just a little bit left here, some S&P data, as well as the Michigan inflation data. Moving over to Max Pain, you can see Max Pain now for the Friday stepped down a little bit, 585, current price 590. Can still see a ton of puts in here, but really we're kind of centered between this 570 and 610 area, expecting just a little bit of bearishness there into the Friday, and you can see red across the board here for the next couple trading days. This is significantly more red here today than it was yesterday, so we'll see if that ends up playing a factor in tomorrow's charts or not. Tomorrow is 1.6% down, and then if we did get that move, would be slightly bullish into the Friday, but right now, slight bullishness on the thesis for Max Pain. Moving over to the charts, looking at the S&Ps here, you can see we threw a huge wick to the downside right to that 21 EMA, once again at 585.28. Ended up staying just positive on the day, 0.03, right at this trend resistance here, which continues to sit at 591.30. For tomorrow, it'll be a little higher, 591.77. Momentum still bearish. RSI, really strange here where you see the SMA trend higher and the RSI trend higher on the same day. That is not super common. I don't know if I've ever seen it do that, where they trend in the same direction, but the RSI is below the SMA at the same time. So interesting to see that. Overall, slightly bullish, down just a smidgen after hours. Momentum to the downside, very, very little. So right now, 21 EMA and VWAP continues to be support. in that 585.14, 585.28 area. And then looking at it on the short time frames, you can see big down move initially. First candle was pretty big, 0.6 to the downside, and then we overthrew this level here, 585.91, which is the level that I was watching. Touched that level, very quickly retraced, touched it a second time, retraced again, came down into the zone, missed the touch, so that's a bullish signal. Higher low, higher low, higher low. Ended up getting the rally into the end of the session. Big push there to stay positive on the day, just barely. You can see we're falling a smidgen after hours, but nothing crazy. Still in the same consolidation range, stuck between this level here and the trend. So same day, same consolidation. We were looking for the continuation up to that 144 EMA, but the pre-market and the market open ended up being quite bearish. So still in the same consolidation, looking at the higher low, waiting to see this breakout or not, or it's going to break below this level, and then we're going to get a push down to that 579.78 level. Moving over to the Tasty charts here, you can see we touched that 144 EMA once again. That continues to sit at 585.26. So multiple things in here. 144 EMA on the 4-hour, plus that 21 EMA on the daily chart continues to be an interesting level. Waiting to see if this trends back up to that ATR trailing stop, which is sitting right now at 592.79. Still in the middle of this trading range. Again, I would argue it does look a little bit bullish with that higher low. Volume coming through on the up candle, momentum slightly bullish here, but we are in technically bearish conditions with that ATR trailing stop to the upside. You can see as well that the ATR bands are now trending sideways. They were trending lower here. And you can see over the last 3 days of consolidation, they've started to trend a little bit more sideways. That gives you this kind of opportunity for a swing up to that upper band, which would give you the 595.83 price target. Moving over to the NASDAQ, very similar thesis to the S&Ps, but it did end up staying negative on the day, 0.06 to the downside, just 20 cents. Still cannot get above this trend line. The level was 504.21, didn't quite touch it. Tomorrow it's going to be a little bit higher here at 504. The level today was 504.21. Tomorrow it's going to be a little higher, 504.85. Momentum still not going with it. Same deal here on RSI. Slightly different thesis here on RSI where it did trend down slightly, but the SMA went up with markets actually being negative on the day. So a little bit of a weird reaction there. Either way, still found support. Waiting to see if this breaks up to that 9 EMA at 507.23 or potentially breaks up to the trend here around 511.84. If this ends up being a base, very similar to this move here, down candle, base, up candle, not exactly the same with that second one being an up, holding here on the 4th, but if we get the continuation into the next day, then we could see an acceleration, potentially eclipsing these previous highs, but for right now, still holding in the same trading range. And then just a brief look at how I played this. You can see on this very first down candle, very big bearish, 0.85 to the downside. I got stopped out immediately on the market open. Ended up being patient, sold some puts into this rally, took a very small profit on that put, started to reject, held the level. So my level was 498.44. You can see we touched it, same as the SPY. These next ones came up just a smidgen short. The low of that candle was 498.50, so missed it by about 6 cents. And then I did buy into this candle here, sold the call against it, ended up rolling out to the next day here on that big up candle as we hit the resistance at 503.52. You can see a couple of wicks at that level. Starting to sell just a little bit, but not too bad, just $1 lower. The volatility on the day was quite a lot. The implied vol for the move was also quite a lot. So the covered call will cover this $1 move if that's what we end up getting. Either way, your trading range right now is still between these levels, 498.44 and 503.52. The other thing I wanted to highlight here is we got above this 55 EMA here, came back, retested this zone, rallied back up out of that area. So your support, dynamic support would be that 55 EMA at 533. Would want to see that zone hold in here. And then if we break out, obviously, then we're going to have to make adjustments to try to capture some more of those longer term gains, because if we break out of this trading range, like I said on the daily chart, I think there's some more upside potentially into the 512 area. And then moving over to the Qs here, you can see very similar to the SPY on the Tasty charts. You can see that 144 EMA was your support. Once again, that is still trading at 499.44. So that level right in there continues to look good. Tested that level again, and you can see it actually held up better than the previous couple days. You have a low, slightly lower low here, ended up bouncing, and then you have a slightly higher low here, ended up rallying again. Your resistance is still that 55, as well as the 34 EMAs right in there at 503.62. So same trading range that we talked about as your trend resistance and my levels on the previous charts, but held a slightly higher low. You can see ATR bands trending sideways once again. Momentum bullish, not a ton of volume. Either way, still looks okay. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow, the Russell managed to stay positive as well, 0.13 to the upside. Momentum still fading, RSI still doing weird things. So holding up, slightly positive day, down a smidgen after hours, about 20 cents, and it was only up about 30 on the day. So we're still in the same trading range between that 229.18 level and the 232.09. I would expect a push up to that next level here tomorrow. If momentum steps flat and starts to step to bullish, we should get a reacceleration here off of that 21 EMA. That was one of the potential plays that we were watching for off this down move here. Hit the 21, we've done that. We've started to find some momentum to the upside. And then looking at the hourly chart here just for a moment, I wanted to highlight this key support level. We talked about it yesterday, 229.18. Super important to have these levels. You can see we rallied through it, came back, retested it, rallied out of it. Everything looks good there. 21 EMA on the hourly support at 230.47, falling just a smidgen after hours, but still think it looks good in my opinion. And then similarly here on the Dow, you can see we did retrace, almost hit VWAP, held a slightly higher low. Momentum not going with it yet. RSIs both trending up together, interesting and weird, but still positive on the day, 0.33, looking for a push to that 9 EMA at 437.17. Moving over to the Mag 7, the Mag 7 is still hanging in there. It was slightly negative on the day, but it did touch this trend, did find a bounce, momentum flat, RSI right on top of it, but still slightly bullish here. You can see it did peak above, did peak below, but still well above the 50 line here in this sideways consolidation. Still want to see this push up to this zone here around 315. Let's go ahead and extend that out slightly here, which would give you a target around 315.67. Want to see it accelerate into that zone. We're still in this kind of channel here, so 21 EMA got touched. We've held higher lows. Everything still looks good for a slight push back up into that zone there. Moving over here to MicroStrategy, I got asked about this company, and it's been an absolutely massive run here. You can see December of 22, we were at $14, and since then it's been on a run of 3,400% over the past nearly 2 years. It's taken a little while to do it, but an absolutely colossal run. Just this last week was 39%. So we went from $14 up to nearly $500, and it's up more after hours. It's kind of hard to give things like this structure, but I did my best here. I gave it a center line here, gave it an up line here, marked a bottom, marked a top here in March of 24, and then if that trend line ends up holding, that would say that this most recent run is kind of done. That's where this previous run, very similar to it, actually culminated. Before we got a bit of a pullback in time, tested some of these levels, and then rallied up super aggressive. The volume continues to ramp as this continues to run, so everything you would want to see on a rally like this continues to look good. There's really no levels. This is all-time highs for this company. Really hard to work off of any levels there. Jumping down to the daily chart, let's try to give it a little structure. So you got a little bit of a low here at 326.68. Not super useful. We're $150 higher than that level, and it did that in 4 days of run. So massive, massive moves here. 13%, nearly 12%, and then another 10% on back-to-back moves. So I would argue this is extended, but it's absolutely on a run. It's hard to get in the way of that. If I was in it for this run, I would definitely be taking profits around this trend line here. The trend right now sitting at 533, so maybe you try to want to squeeze out this last little bit. Maybe it'll touch it. You could certainly argue that it might. You can see here on this previous touch, rallied to it, pulled back, rallied to it again before having a decent pullback. Tons of volatility in this stock. You can see even this relatively small looking move here was about a 50% move. So tons of volatility if you're going to try to trade this, but this is a zone of resistance. It's been a massive run into it. I would be patient at these levels. Moving over to Apple and Microsoft. Apple was positive 0.32, sold off about 50 cents after hours, which was most of the gains for the day. Momentum still bullish, RSI still bullish, still cannot touch that level at 230.28, continues to throw wicks into that zone and reject from there. Still cannot get above it and break, even though everything still shows bullish. At this point, it's starting to look a bit like a bear flag for me. If this breaks to the downside, that's going to be quite bearish. Now you can see what that structure looks like here. Looks like a bit of a bear flag, move down, grinding action, starting to come off of that upper trend here. If it starts to reject, that's going to be bearish. Breaks out of the flag and breaks down, that's going to be quite bearish. So overall, still in this consolidation, looks like a bit of a bear flag there. And then looking at Microsoft, hanging man candle, broke the level briefly for 1336. Ended up finding support in this zone here once again, touched my alert just for a second and then rallied back into this range. So nothing happening there, waiting to see what happens as this continues to sit in the same trading range. Still slightly bearish in my opinion. Momentum slightly bearish. RSI breaking back below the SMA after touching it yesterday. So looks slightly bearish to me, but still hasn't gone anywhere. Moving over to Tesla and Nvidia, you can see Tesla slightly bearish, 1.5%. Still cannot get off this trend here. Still looks like resistance, momentum stepping down. RSI probably going to break below it tomorrow in my opinion. Looks like a bit of a double top now. Still an uptrend in the medium term, but short term I would expect some pullbacks here. And then Nvidia, the big one for the day, basically did exactly what I thought it was going to do. We said we didn't think it was going to be super volatile, but if I had to pick a direction, I would say slightly bearish. And it turns out that's basically exactly what we got. So we ended up down about $3. Nothing crazy. Very, very slight pullback in the grand scheme of Nvidia. You can see it's been a massive run. Just this most recent run here was about 44%. So massive, massive moves. Continues to be very, very bullish. $3 here in the short term. Nothing crazy to the downside. Support is still 140.76. If this starts to crater, maybe we see a change in structure. It fit with the thesis as well with this overall downtrend on the RSI. SMA trending lower, retest, continuation lower, big volume. And looking at the hourly chart, I just want to highlight, you can see through a big wick to this previous low back from the Monday, ended up bouncing and then grinding slightly lower, but still in the same trading range. No change to the thesis overall for Nvidia. Still think it could go higher medium term, but short term consolidation, lower highs, might show a little bit lower low tomorrow. Moving over to Alphabet and Amazon, both of these were hanging man candles, slightly bearish on the day, 0.85, 1.25, nothing crazy here. Tested support, ended up holding momentum, RSI still bearish, so see how it plays out. I was looking for the continuation run, ended up not getting that here on Alphabet as well, down 1.25. Back into that 21 EMA as support, 174.77 needs to hold. Momentum bearish, RSI bearish. This is probably going to sell a little bit more now with this high, lower high potentially setting up, especially if we get a continuation lower. 21 would be your first target, 174.77, 144 below that at 171.62, and then my level here, 170.95. And I would expect a little bit more continuation lower, down 3 cents after hours, really no movement there. Moving over to staples and discretionaries, these continue to look basically the same as they have for the last couple days. Still liking staples, still holding this 144, still holding a solid base off of this bull flag setup. So once it breaks here, I think we're going to take some trades. Look for a retest of these upper levels in the 84 to 84.50 zone, which should give you about a 5% potential move there. Might take a long time. We'll see how it ends up playing out, but I do like this, kind of a medium-term play. And then looking at discretionaries, really no change. Again, kind of looks like a bull flag, grinding price action off of a big ripper style move, momentum fading, RSI breaking down, kind of holding a bottom now in here around 212.50. I don't have any levels in there, but that seems to be the zone that we're holding right now, just below the level, 215.06. If it can get above here, maybe we get a push up into the 218.90, 219 area. That would give you a retest of this zone here. Maybe you get a double top and then get a bigger breakdown, but for right now, it seems to be holding up, looking for a push and a retest up to that trend. Moving over to oil and gas and transports. Oil and gas had a great day, 1.64%, pushing right towards the level, 145.92. I just shit the bed on this one, to be honest. Did not take the trade, definitely continued to run, closed on the highs. Oil and gas looking very, very good. Your trend resistance would be up around here, 150, and then next level, 154. Hopefully somebody's trading this better than I am. I got stopped out. I think I made a little bit of money in here, not a lot, but momentum bullish, RSI bullish, everything looks good. Big breakout here today, continuation expected in my opinion. And then transports, testing some trend in here, testing that 21 EMA, testing VWAP. Momentum still bearish, but finding a little bit of bullishness on the day. If this overall medium structure ends up holding up, which it absolutely could, that would give you a push up to the trend here around $73.80, $74, somewhere in there. At least retest the high and then we'll see what happens. Overall, momentum still bearish. If it breaks this structure, your next support would be 69.29 in the vicinity of that 55 EMA here for the daily. Moving over to Riot and Marathon. Riot was down slightly, about 1%, momentum bearish. Still cannot kind of get this continuation off of VWAP. It's still holding in there, still could do it, but Mara had the big move. Gapped right through my alert, so I did not get the alert, which is a bit of a bummer. Gapped above it, didn't touch it, continuation. Up nearly 14%, nearly to the trend lines, up more after hours. The trend resistance here is at 24.44, so did everything that we thought it was going to do on the day, and I missed it once again, so that's a bummer. Like I said, gapped through it. Overall, should go. If it breaks through here, maybe we head up to that 33 area. Might find some resistance in here at this previous top, 26.60. Probably should add a level there. So overall, looks good for tomorrow. Moving over to Breadth. Breadth finally caught a bid here after this kind of falling action. Held the 21, held the level on 20-day, nearly retraced all of the move yesterday. Overall, looks okay, and then looking at 50-day, even better here, 3.78% on the day. Touched this 52.82 level, ended up rallying, looking for a slight push here. Momentum still flat, RSI still trending up. Both of them trending up, similar to everything we've been talking about. Very, very weird to see that. But overall, this is slightly bullish. Looking for a bit of a push here. We did get the gap down. Doji didn't gap up and rally, but we did get a rally out of it. If momentum steps to bullish, maybe we end up holding a high, a low, higher low here. Then we get a continuation maybe. Not super convincing, but it's potentially a setup. Let's talk about yields here just for a second, 2-year and 10-year. Really what I want to highlight is the fact that these have finally cooled off a little bit. They haven't come down really. We got into the zone at the beginning of November and we finally stopped ripping to the upside. We were ripping to the upside from mid-September all the way here until the start of November. And now we've kind of flattened out, a little bit of a pullback in time. I think that's starting to reduce some of the pressure on equities. So a little bit of sideways choppy, allowing equities to find a little bit of strength. You can also see momentum on both of these is bearish. RSI starting to trend lower. Maybe this pulls back a little bit. It hasn't done it yet, but they've at least stopped going higher, which should give equities a little bit of room. Moving over to the dollar, we did get a little bit of a retracement. We said it yesterday, 3 days in a row of downwards. Usually that's when you start to see a little bit of a retracement back in the opposite direction. You can see it here, 3 days in a row of downside, up candle. Then you get the continuation lower. If we get the continuation here, again, want to see it move a little lower, give equities some room. So far, it looks a little bit bearish. Momentum slightly bearish here on the hourly. Momentum still stepping to bearish on the daily as well. RSI still holding up. So hasn't moved a whole lot, but again, it's been ripping to the upside just like yields. And now at least it has slowed down for a couple of days at resistance. Maybe that gives equities a little bit of room. But either way, still extended, waiting to see if this pulls back a little bit or if it breaks to the upside. Moving over to bonds here, J&K basically unchanged on the day, 0.06, which was 6 cents lower. TLT slightly negative as well. Still in this basing formation. Again, I think this is a medium-term play. I think this is going to base off for a while. Hold this zone, continue to flatten in this area, and then we'll start to see this roll to the upside. Has a tendency to do it. You can see topping pattern here. We got into this price action in mid-August, broke down from here at the end of September, and then you got that kind of flush out. Same here, bottoming pattern, got here in April, still here mid-May, end of May, and then you kind of get that rip out of it. So it takes a long time to make a move. I think this is the zone where it's going to hold up, and eventually this will start to roll to the upside in my opinion. Moving over to the VIX. VIX making a new higher high, once again hitting that target at 1850. Eclipsed this previous high from the previous day. Momentum continues to swing. RSI continues to look good here to the bull side on the VIX. Probably going to touch the 20 level if it can continue to kind of grind higher here. Maybe a little bit of vol comes out now that we're done with pretty much all of the earnings. But interestingly, this continues to go higher even though markets are still holding up slightly bullish, like we saw pretty much across the board here. So VIX going higher, markets going higher, RSIs and SMAs going higher. Markets are a little bit weird right now, searching for some direction. But right now, VIX looks like it's going higher, and so do markets. Moving over to my accounts, they must have changed the algorithm here on this software, but it's allowing the price of my totals here to fluctuate after hours. Didn't used to do that. It used to kind of lock in at the end of the day to give me a hard total, but you can see it's fluctuating here. I don't like that a lot, but either way, you can see the Qs have actually fallen quite a bit since I started making this video. Ended up falling about $2, so maybe a little more than that, down into the almost $51 level, so a little bit more than $2. So either way, you can see that's basically where I bought the stock. Buy price here was 574 cents, and that's basically where we're hovering. Oh, maybe it's just right at the end of the after hour session. Maybe that's why it's fluctuating, but we'll see how it plays out in the morning. We'll just take the total here, 685. Ended up negative on the day based on that, but you'll also see here I have a 502 covered call for tomorrow for $4 credit. That's the kind of volatility we were seeing into the end of the session. So that's an $800 credit at 502. If we did close at this price tomorrow around that 500 level, I would be covered for this $3 loss because I have that $400 credit. So net tomorrow, that would be about a $200 gain on the day. We'll see how it plays out. Maybe it's just volatility at the end of the after hours. And then looking at the IWM, held this position, rolled out to 230 for tomorrow. I actually did take the shares off at one point, then put them back on, ended up positive on the day, managed to squeak out a small profit. And then you can see 230 for that $1.45 credit. Again, that's down just a smidgen after hours, not a whole lot, just a little bit. So overall, moderately bullish, trying to capture some of that credit for tomorrow's session. So let me know down in the comment section what you thought of the Nvidia earnings and where you think markets are going in tomorrow's session. Are we going to be able to hold here and then rally up and make some new highs? Or are we going to break down from this sideways choppy action and mark this as a longer term top? Definitely like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video. Make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.